Chapter 4 Computer Insecurity. Certificate Examination in Prevention of Cybercrimes and Fraud Management. Subscribe, like, and share. Security and systems design. Most current real-world computer security efforts focus on external threats, and generally treat the computer system itself as a trusted system. Some knowledgeable observers consider this to be a disastrous mistake, and point out that this distinction is the cause of much of the insecurity of current computer systems. Once an attacker has subverted one part of a system without fine-grained security, he or she usually has access to most or all of the features of that system. Citation needed, because computer systems can be very complex, and cannot be guaranteed to be free of defects. This security stance tends to produce insecure systems. The trusted systems approach has been predominant in the design of many Microsoft software products, due to the long-standing Microsoft policy of emphasizing functionality and ease of use over security. Since Microsoft products currently dominate the desktop and home computing markets, this has led to unfortunate effects. However, the problems described here derive from the security stance taken by software and hardware vendors generally, rather than the failing of a single vendor. Microsoft is not out of line in this respect, just far more prominent with respect to its consumer market share. It should be noted that the Windows NT line of operating systems from Microsoft contain mechanisms to limit this, such as services that run under dedicated user accounts, and role-based access control, RBAC, with user/group rights, but the Windows 95 line of products lacked most of these functions. Before the release of Windows 2003, Microsoft has changed their official stance, taking a more lockdown approach. On the 15th of January 2002, Bill Gates sent out a memo on trustworthy computing, marking the official change in company stance. Regardless, Microsoft's operating system Windows XP is still plagued by complaints about lack of local security and inability to use the fine-grained user access controls together with certain software, especially certain popular computer games. Financial cost. Serious financial damage has been caused by computer security breaches, but reliably estimating costs is quite difficult. Figures in the billions of dollars have been quoted in relation to the damage caused by malware such as computer worms like the Code Red worm, but such estimates may be exaggerated. However, other losses, such as those caused by the compromise of credit card information, can be more easily determined, and they have been substantial, as measured by millions of individual victims of identity theft each year in each of several nations, and the severe hardship imposed on each victim, that can wipe out all of their finances, prevent them from getting a job, plus be treated as if they were the criminal. Volumes of victims of phishing and other scams may not be known. Individuals who have been infected with spyware or malware likely go through a costly and time-consuming process of having their computer cleaned. Spyware and malware is considered to be a problem specific to the various Microsoft Windows operating systems. However, this can be explained somewhat by the fact that Microsoft controls a major share of the PC market and thus represent the most prominent target. Reasons. There are many similarities, yet many fundamental differences, between computer and physical security. Just like real-world security, the motivations for breaches of computer security vary between attackers, sometimes called hackers or crackers. Some are teenage thrill-seekers or vandals, the kind often responsible for defacing websites. Similarly, some website defacements are done to make political statements. However, some attackers are highly skilled and motivated with the goal of compromising computers for financial gain or espionage. An example of the latter is Marcus Hess, who spied for the KGB and was ultimately caught because of the efforts of Clifford Stoll, who wrote an amusing and accurate book, The Cuckoo's Egg, about his experiences. For those seeking to prevent security breaches, the first step is usually to attempt to identify what might motivate an attack on the system, how much the continued operation and information security of the system are worth, and who might be motivated to breach it. The precautions required for a home PC are very different for those of bank's internet banking system, and different again for a classified military network. Other computer security writers suggest that, since an attacker using a network need know nothing about you or what you have on your computer, attacker motivation is inherently impossible to determine beyond guessing. If true, Blocking all possible attacks is the only plausible action to take. Vulnerabilities. To understand the techniques for securing a computer system, it is important to first understand the various types of attacks that can be made against it. These threats can typically be classified into one of these 7 categories. Exploit. Software flaws, especially buffer overflows, are often exploited to gain control of a computer, or to cause it to operate in an unexpected manner. Many development methodologies used by embedded software licensing professionals rely on testing to ensure the quality of any code released. This process often fails to discover extremely unusual potential exploits. The term exploit generally refers to small programs designed to take advantage of a software flaw that has been discovered, either remote or local. The code from the exploit program is frequently reused in Trojan horses and computer viruses. In some cases, a vulnerability can lie in certain programs' processing of a specific file type, such as a non-executable media file. Eavesdropping. Any data that is transmitted over a network is at some risk of being eavesdropped, or even modified by a malicious person. Even machines that operate as a closed system and number 40, with no contact to the outside world, and number 41, can be eavesdropped upon by monitoring the faint electromagnetic transmissions generated by the hardware, such as Tempest. The FBI's proposed Carnivore program was intended to act as a system of eavesdropping protocols built into the systems of Internet service providers. Social engineering and human error. A computer system is no more secure than the human systems responsible for its operation. Malicious individuals have regularly penetrated well-designed, secure computer systems by taking advantage of the carelessness of trusted individuals, or by deliberately deceiving them, for example sending messages that they are the system administrator and asking for passwords. This deception is known as social engineering. Denial of service attacks. Denial of service, DOS, attacks differ slightly from those listed above, in that they are not primarily a means to gain unauthorized access or control of a system. They are instead designed to render it unusable. Attackers can deny service to individual victims, such as by deliberately guessing a wrong password 3 consecutive times and thus causing the victim account to be locked, or they may overload the capabilities of a machine or network and block all users at once. These types of attack are, in practice, very hard to prevent, because the behavior of whole networks needs to be analyzed, not only the behavior of small pieces of code. Distributed denial of service, DDoS, attacks are common, where a large number of compromised hosts, commonly referred to as zombie computers, are used to flood a target system with network requests, thus attempting to render it unusable through resource exhaustion. Another technique to exhaust victim resources is through the use of an attack amplifier, where the attacker takes advantage of poorly designed protocols on third-party machines, such as FTP or DNS, in order to instruct these hosts to launch the flood. There are also commonly vulnerabilities in applications that cannot be used to take control over a computer, but merely make the target application malfunction or crash. This is known as a denial of service exploit. Indirect attacks, attacks in which one or more of the attack types above are launched from a third-party computer which has been taken over remotely. By using someone else's computer to launch an attack, it becomes far more difficult to track down the actual attacker. There have also been cases where attackers took advantage of public anonymizing systems, such as the Tor Onion router system. Backdoors, methods of bypassing normal authentication or giving remote access to a computer to somebody who knows about the backdoor, while intended to remain hidden to casual inspection. The backdoor may take the form of an installed program, for example, backorifice, or could be in the form of an existing legitimate program, or executable file. A specific form of backdoors are rootkits, which replaces system binaries and or hooks into the function calls of the operating system to hide the presence of other programs, users, services and open ports. It may also fake information about disk and memory usage. Direct access attacks, common consumer devices that can be used to transfer data surreptitiously. Someone gaining physical access to a computer can install all manner of devices to compromise security, including operating system modifications, software worms, keyloggers, and covert listening devices. The attacker can also easily download large quantities of data onto backup media, for instance CDR/DVD-R, tape, or portable devices such as key drives, digital cameras or digital audio players. Another common technique is to boot an operating system contained on a CD-ROM or other bootable media and read the data from the hard drives this way. The only way to defeat this is to encrypt the storage media and store the key separate from the system. Reducing vulnerabilities. Computer code is regarded by some as just a form of mathematics. It is theoretically possible to prove the correctness of computer programs, though the likelihood of actually achieving this in large-scale practical systems is regarded as unlikely in the extreme by some with practical experience in the industry. See Bruce Schneier et al. It's also possible to protect messages in transit, communications, by means of cryptography. One method of encryption, the one-time pad, has been proven to be unbreakable when correctly used. This method was used by the Soviet Union during the Cold War, though flaws in their implementation allowed some cryptanalysis. See Venona project. The method uses a matching pair of key codes, securely distributed, which are used once and only once to encode and decode a single message. For transmitted computer encryption, this method is difficult to use properly, securely, and highly inconvenient as well. Other methods of encryption, while breakable in theory, are often virtually impossible to directly break by any means publicly known today. Breaking them requires some non-cryptographic input, such as a stolen key, stolen plaintext, at either end of the transmission, or some other extra cryptanalytic information. Social engineering and direct computer access. Physical attacks can only be prevented by non-computer means, which can be difficult to enforce, relative to the sensitivity of the information. Even in a highly disciplined environment, such as in military organizations, social engineering attacks can still be difficult to foresee and prevent. In practice, only a small fraction of computer program code is mathematically proven, or even goes through comprehensive information technology audits or inexpensive but extremely valuable computer security audits, so it's usually possible for a determined cracker to read, copy, alter or destroy data in well-secured computers, albeit at the cost of great time and resources. Extremely few, if any, attackers would audit applications for vulnerabilities just to attack a single specific system. You can reduce a cracker's chances by keeping your systems up to date, using a security scanner and hiring competent people responsible for security. The effects of data loss/damage can be reduced by careful backing up and insurance. Security measures. A state of computer security is the conceptual ideal, attained by the use of the three processes: 1. Prevention, 2. Detection, and 3. Response. User account access controls and cryptography can protect systems, files, and data, respectively. Firewalls are by far the most common prevention systems from a network security perspective, as they can, if properly configured, shield access to internal network services, and block certain kinds of attacks through packet filtering. Intrusion detection systems, IDSs, are designed to detect network attacks in progress and assist in post-attack forensics, while audit trails and logs serve a similar function for individual systems. Response is necessarily defined by the assessed security requirements of an individual system and may cover the range from simple upgrade of protections to notification of legal authorities, counterattacks, and the like. In some special cases, a complete destruction of the compromised system is favored. Today, computer security comprises mainly preventive measures, like firewalls or an exit procedure. A firewall can be defined as a way of filtering network data between a host or a network and another network, such as the Internet, and is normally implemented as software running on the machine, hooking into the network stack, or, in the case of most Unix-based operating systems such as Linux, built into the operating system kernel, to provide real-time filtering and blocking. Another implementation is a so-called physical firewall, which consists of a separate machine filtering network traffic. Firewalls are common amongst machines that are permanently connected to the Internet, though not universal, as demonstrated by the large numbers of machines cracked by worms like the Code Red worm, which would have been protected by a properly configured firewall. However, Relatively few organizations maintain computer systems with effective detection systems, and fewer still have organized response mechanisms in place. Difficulty with responding forcefully to attempted security breaches, in the manner that one would for attempted physical security breaches, is often very difficult for a variety of reasons, and fewer still have organized response mechanisms in place. Identifying attackers is difficult, as they are often in a different jurisdiction to the systems they attempt to breach, and operate through proxies, temporary anonymous dial-up accounts, wireless connections, and other anonymizing procedures which make backtracing difficult and are often located in yet another jurisdiction. If they successfully breach security, they are often able to delete logs to cover their tracks. The sheer number of attempted attacks is so large that organizations cannot spend time pursuing each attacker. A typical home user with a permanent, e.g., cable modem, connection will be attacked at least several times per day, so more attractive targets could be presumed to see many more. Note, however, that most of the sheer bulk of these attacks are made by automated vulnerability scanners and computer worms. Law enforcement officers are often unfamiliar with information technology, and so lack the skills and interest in pursuing attackers. There are also budgetary constraints. It has been argued that the high cost of technology, such as DNA testing, and improved forensics mean less money for other kinds of law enforcement, so the overall rate of criminals not getting dealt with goes up as the cost of the technology increase. 4.1 Pillars of Information Security. Security is a constant worry when it comes to information technology. Data theft, hacking, malware and a host of other threats are enough to keep any IT professional up at night. Information security follows three overarching principles. Confidentiality. This means that information is only being seen or used by people who are authorized to access it. Integrity. This means that any changes to the information by an unauthorized user are impossible, or at least detected, and changes by authorized users are tracked. Availability. This means that the information is accessible when authorized users need it. Information assurance, IA, refers to the steps involved in protecting information systems, like computer systems and networks. There are commonly 5 terms associated with the definition of information assurance: integrity, availability, authentication, confidentiality, non-repudiation. IA is a field in and of itself. It can be thought of as a specialty of information technology, IT, because an IA specialist must have a thorough understanding of IT and how information systems work and are interconnected. With all of the threats that are now common in the IT world, such as viruses, worms, phishing attacks, social engineering, identity theft and more, a focus on protection against these threats is required. IA is that focus. 1. Confidentiality, in the context of computer systems, allows authorized users to access sensitive and protected data. Specific mechanisms ensure confidentiality and safeguard data from harmful intruders. Confidentiality is one of the 5 pillars of information assurance, IA. The other 4 are authentication, availability, integrity and non-repudiation. Sensitive information or data should be disclosed to authorized users only. In IA, confidentiality is enforced in a classification system. For example, a U.S. government or military worker must obtain a certain clearance level, depending on a position's data requirements, such as classified, secret or top secret. Those with secret clearances cannot access top secret information. Best practices used to ensure confidentiality are as follows: an authentication process, which ensures that authorized users are assigned confidential user identification and passwords. Another type of authentication is biometrics. Role-based security methods may be employed to ensure user or viewer authorization. For example, data access levels may be assigned to specified department staff. Access controls ensure that user actions remain within their roles. For example, if a user is authorized to read but not write data, defined system controls may be integrated. 2. Integrity, in the context of computer systems, refers to methods of ensuring that data is real, accurate and safeguarded from unauthorized user modification. Integrity is one of the 5 pillars of information assurance, IA. The other 4 are authentication, availability, confidentiality and non-repudiation. Data integrity maintenance is an information security requirement. Integrity is a major IA component because users must be able to trust information. Untrusted data is devoid of integrity. Stored data must remain unchanged within an information system, and number 40 is and number 41, as well as during data transport. Events like storage erosion, error, and intentional data or system damage can create data changes. For example, hackers may cause damage by infiltrating systems with malware, including Trojan horses, which overtake computer systems, as well as worms and viruses. An employee may create company damage through intentionally false data entry. Data integrity verification measures include checksums and the use of data comparison. 3. Availability, in the context of a computer system, refers to the ability of a user to access information or resources in a specified location and in the correct format. Availability is one of the 5 pillars of information assurance, IA. The other 4 are integrity, authentication, confidentiality, and non-repudiation. When a system is regularly non-functioning, information availability is affected and significantly impacts users. In addition, when data is not secure and easily available, information security is affected, i.e., top-secret security clearances. Another factor affecting availability is time. If a computer system cannot deliver information efficiently, then availability is compromised. Data availability must be ensured by storage, which may be local or at an off-site facility. In the case of an off-site facility, an established business continuity plan should state the availability of this data when on-site data is not available. At all times, information must be available to those with clearance. 4. Non-repudiation is a method of guaranteeing message transmission between parties via digital signature and/or encryption. It is one of the 5 pillars of information assurance, IA. The other 4 are availability, integrity, confidentiality, and authentication. Non-repudiation is often used for digital contracts, signatures, and email messages. By using a data hash, proof of authentic identifying data and data origination can be obtained. Along with digital signatures, public keys can be a problem when it comes to non-repudiation if the message recipient has exposed, either knowingly or unknowingly, their encrypted or secret key. 5. In the context of computer systems, authentication is a process that ensures and confirms a user's identity. Authentication is one of the 5 pillars of information assurance, IA. The other 4 are integrity, availability, confidentiality, and non-repudiation. Authentication begins when a user tries to access information. First, the user must prove his access rights and identity. When logging into a computer, users commonly enter usernames and passwords for authentication purposes. This login combination, which must be assigned to each user, authenticates access. However, this type of authentication can be circumvented by hackers. A better form of authentication, biometrics, depends on the user's presence and biological makeup, i.t.com or retina or fingerprints. This technology makes it more difficult for hackers to break into computer systems. The public key infrastructure, PKI, authentication method uses digital certificates to prove a user's identity. There are other authentication tools, too, such as keycards and USB tokens. One of the greatest authentication threats occurs with email, where authenticity is often difficult to verify. For example, unsecured emails often appear legitimate. 4.2 Two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is a security mechanism that requires 2 types of credentials for authentication and is designed to provide an additional layer of validation, minimizing security breaches. Two-factor authentication is also known as strong authentication. Two-factor authentication works with 2 separate security or validation mechanisms. Typically, one is a physical validation token, and one is a logical code or password. Both must be validated before accessing a secured service or product. Generally, an authenticating procedure requires a physical token or identity validation, followed by a logical password or personal identification number, PIN. The security procedure for an ATM machine is a common example of two-factor authentication, which requires that a user possess a valid ATM card and PIN. 4.3 Single sign-on, SSO, Single sign-on, SSO, is an authentication process that allows a user to access multiple applications with one set of login credentials. SSO is a common procedure in enterprises, where a client accesses multiple resources connected to a local area network, LAN. SSO advantages include, eliminates credential re-authentication and help desk requests, thus, improving productivity. Streamlines local and remote application and desktop workflow. Minimizes phishing. Improves compliance through a centralized database. Provides detailed user access reporting. With SSO, a user logs in once and gains access to different applications, without the need to re-enter login credentials at each application. SSO authentication facilitates seamless network resource usage. SSO mechanisms vary, depending on application type. SSO is not suited for systems requiring guaranteed access, as the loss of login credentials results into denial of access to all systems. Ideally, SSO is used with other authentication techniques, such as smart cards and one-time password tokens. 4.4 Software security. Software security is an idea implemented to protect software against malicious attack and other hacker risks so that the software continues to function correctly under such potential risks. Security is necessary to provide integrity, authentication and availability. Any compromise to integrity, authentication and availability makes a software unsecure. Software systems can be attacked to steal information, monitor content, introduce vulnerabilities and damage the behavior of software. Malware can cause DOS, denial of service, or crash the system itself. Buffer overflow, stack overflow, command injection and SQL injections are the most common attacks on the software. Buffer and stack overflow attacks overwrite the contents of the heap or stack respectively by writing extra bytes. Command injection can be achieved on the software code when system commands are used predominantly. New system commands are appended to existing commands by the malicious attack. Sometimes system command may stop services and cause DOS. SQL injections use malicious SQL code to retrieve or modify important information from database servers. SQL injections can be used to bypass login credentials. Sometimes SQL injections fetch important information from a database or delete all important data from a database. The only way to avoid such attacks is to practice good programming techniques. System-level security can be provided using better firewalls. Using intrusion detection and prevention can also aid in stopping attackers from easy access to the system. 4.5 Hardware security. A hardware security is a secure crypto processor focused on providing cryptographic keys and also provides accelerated cryptographic operations by means of these keys. The module acts as a trust anchor and provides protection for identities, applications and transactions by ensuring tight encryption, decryption and authentication for a variety of applications. The hardware security module includes protection features such as physical tamper resistance and strong authentication. Although the module is physically isolated like smart cards and backtapes, it provides a greater level of security as it does not have an operating system and is thus virtually invulnerable to attacks over a network. Hardware security module systems come in different flavors and form factors, and are less susceptible to corruption and system failures. This is because they do not have an operating system and are externally attached to the device they are serving. Examples of hardware security module systems include physically shielded RAN appliances, smart cards and PCI plug-in cards. Hardware security modules provide protection against internal and external intruders using two-factor authentication. Hardware security modules provide many distinct benefits, including providing certifications that conform to security standards, dual control access protection, load distribution and reliability support for all standard cryptographic algorithms, several transactions per second, greater availability of keys with just one hardware security module. The software and hardware present in the modules are specifically dedicated for security functions and thus provide faster and superior results. 4.6 Physical security. Physical security describes measures designed to ensure the physical protection of IT assets like facilities, equipment, personnel, resources and other properties from damage and unauthorized physical access. Physical security measures are taken in order to protect these assets from physical threats including theft, vandalism, fire and natural disasters. Physical security is often the first concern in facilities with high asset concentration, especially that used in critical systems for business processes. Physical security is especially important for IT resources, as their proper operation demands that the hardware assets and infrastructure they are running on be kept away from anything that could hinder their function. This includes tampering by unauthorized personnel and unforeseen events like accidents and natural disasters. There are two phases of physical security: deterrence, methods and measures that are meant to deter attackers and intruders or prevent natural events and accidents from affecting protected assets. The simple method for this is through the use of physical barriers and signs. The signs serve as a warning to any intruder that their actions will bring physical harm or prosecution. The physical barriers are meant to prevent access entirely or simply to provide protection from external factors like storms or vehicular accidents. Detection allows security personnel to detect and locate potential intruders using surveillance equipment like cameras, motion sensors, security lights and personnel like security guards and watchdog. 4.7 Network security. Network security is an overarching term that describes that the policies and procedures implemented by a network administrator to avoid and keep track of unauthorized access, exploitation, modification, or denial of the network and network resources. This means that a well-implemented network security blocks viruses, malware, hackers, etc. from accessing or altering secure information. The first layer of network security is enforced through a username/password mechanism, which only allows access to authenticated users with customized privileges. When a user is authenticated and granted specific system access, the configured firewall enforces network policies, that is, accessible user services. However, firewalls do not always detect and stop viruses or harmful malware, which may lead to data loss. An antivirus software or an intrusion prevention system and number 40, IPS and number 41, is implemented to prevent the virus and or harmful malware from entering the network. Network security is sometimes confused with information security, which has a different scope and relates to data integrity of all forms, print or electronic. Some of the cybercrimes related to security is 1. Masquerade attack. A masquerade attack is an attack that uses a fake identity, such as a network identity, to gain unauthorized access to personal computer information through legitimate access identification. If an authorization process is not fully protected, it can become extremely vulnerable to a masquerade attack. Masquerade attacks can be perpetrated using stolen passwords and logons, by locating gaps in programs, or by finding a way around the authentication process. The attack can be triggered either by someone within the organization or by an outsider if the organization is connected to a public network. The amount of access masquerade attackers get depends on the level of authorization they've managed to attain. As such, masquerade attackers can have a full smorgasbord of cybercrime opportunities if they've gained the highest access authority to a business organization. Personal attacks, although less common, can also be harmful. Masquerade attacks may happen in a number of ways. In case of an insider attack, a masquerade attacker gains access to the account of a legitimate user either by stealing the victim's account ID and password, or by using a keylogger. Another common method is by exploiting a legitimate user's laziness and trust. For example, if a legitimate user leaves the terminal or session open and logged in, a coworker may act as a masquerade attacker. Vulnerable authentication is one of the other factors that can trigger a masquerade attack, as it helps the attacker to gain access much more easily. Once the attackers gain access, they can get into all of the organization's critical data and can delete or modify it, steal sensitive data, or alter routing information and network configuration. For example, although a unique IP address is assigned to each individual computer, a hacker can convince another system that it is the authorized user through spoofing, essentially convincing the target computer that the hacker's computer has the same IP. A standard strategy to resist this kind of attack is to create innovative algorithms that can efficiently detect the suspicious actions, which could result in the detection of imposters too. Trapdoors. A backdoor is a technique in which a system security mechanism is bypassed undetectably to access a computer or its data. The backdoor access method is sometimes written by the programmer who develops a program. A backdoor is also known as a trapdoor. Backdoor threats increase when multi-user and networking operating systems are used by many organizations. In a login system, a backdoor used for system access may be in the form of a hard-coded username and password. A network administrator, NAR, may intentionally create or install a backdoor program for troubleshooting or other official use. Hackers use backdoors to install malicious software, malware, files or programs, modify code or detect files and gain system and/or data access. Even backdoors installed by network administrators pose security risks because they provide a mechanism by which the system can be exploited if discovered. BYOD, or Bring Your Own Technology, also simply known as BYO or Bring Your Own Device, BYOD, is more than just an IT trend, it's a newer way of life. And while BYOD may have its roots with executives, who've long demanded the ability to use the latest mobile devices for work, it has spread among the ranks, along with the proliferation of smartphones and tablet computers. The catchphrase often heard in discussions of BYOD is consumerization of IT. In other words, it's no longer just the geeks or the execs that want the best technology. Not long ago, employees were thrilled simply to have a company phone. Now, employees become angry when stuck with anything other than the latest and greatest models. As people increase dependence on personal mobile devices in many life areas, it's no wonder they want to be able to access company emails and applications without giving up the convenience of their favorite devices.